very large part, it's not even 50-50, it's probably far more than that, lies within us in terms of the control. And that we need to somehow, this is what we are going to talk about in that part of the session, and some of it will be, I'm sure, Ujjaval is going to talk about values and beliefs, and Cindy is going to talk about self, and Priya is going to talk about emotional intelligence. All of it really come together in terms of how in our mind we need to realign, reframe in some ways, that we understand what our blind spots are, so that we are able to make the best use of the kind of resolutions and intentions and affirmations that we set for ourselves, and so they become successful.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Good to see you all here. As our lovely participants are joining in for our webinar today, I'd like to share with you our poster from today, which is on a very, very, very exciting series that we're bringing to you all this month, which is Thrive in 2023. Leave a comment on the chat box if you've seen this, either on our socials, on the website, somewhere. If you're coming in for this, if you've already registered, do drop in a message there. We'd like to know who all are coming in. So today's webinar is on Thrive in 2023. We have our wonderful power coaches with us. We have Cindy, Ram, and Ujjaval who join in today to give you all a sneak peek of what's coming your way. We're just a few days away and our registrations are pouring in, and it's really, really wonderful to see the kind of responses we are receiving and the queries that are coming in. So keep those going, and we hope that in today's webinar as well, you have a lot of questions for our guests, for our panel members. So a few minutes back, you must have seen on our socials, we had put out a message saying that we have a special surprise for all the participants who join in today for the webinar. So I'm going to wait maybe for 30 more seconds as people are coming in to share with you what the special offer is for you all. And as people are coming in, do share with us where you're joining in from, what you are excited to know about in today's webinar. We have Nagesh from Hyderabad, Aruna from Mumbai, Delhi, London. We also have Yamini with us from Team Kocharya on the chat box. Wonderful. Okay, wonderful. So the special surprise that we have for you all is for all the participants who've joined us today, and for your friends and friends of your friends and your family, we have a special offer, which is if you register today, which is on 9th November before 11:59 p.m. IST, you get our 4-part series at a special discounted rate of just $39. So hope you're excited about that. We wanted to give you this special surprise for tuning in today. So Yamini is on the chat box. I'll request you to put down, we have a code which you need to put in there, which is webinar November. So NOV for November 9. So Yamini is going to just put that up in the chat box for you, along with the registration link. And we hope to see you all at Thrive in 2023 in just a few more days. So I'm going to pause now, and I'm going to welcome our panel members, Ram, Cindy, and Ujjwal. Thank you so much for coming in. Really, really excited for the series and to get to know what you're bringing to us in the series today. So over to you, Ram.
Yeah, over to you, Cindy. Thanks a lot, Kiva.
Thanks, Kiva. So a little bit about Thrive 2023. It started on a very insightful, creative note where I think many of you know Smitha, our client director or our director of client services, had this idea. And again, the team put their heads together and the idea grew into a program. And we thought one of the biggest intentions of that idea was, what can we offer our coaches or the community of coaches that are, connected to us, engaged with us, and others? What can we offer them to give them a head start in 2023? And of course, we put together a few modules or a few webinar topics that each one of us will discuss with you as we go through these webinars every week. The topic that I'm going to pick up on is leading self with or leading others in uncertain times. In a nutshell, we've all been through a certain amount of uncertainty over the last 2 years with COVID. Work situations. And this year, uncertainty still stayed with many around what to do next, what steps do I take, what are my action plans. Uncertainty also showed up in different ways around, I really want to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm not sure why I'm not doing it, or I'm not sure why I'm not taking the steps necessary. Of course, in many cases, people knew what they wanted and knew the outcomes they were looking for, but something got in their way. So without giving too much of my topic away, the one thing I would like to talk about is, even in uncertain times, you can still adopt a certain attitude or an attitude of certainty for yourself. So there could be all sorts of uncertainties around you, but you for yourself know what you would like to keep or preserve. And in that process, you would also discover what are some of the things you need to let go of. Even in uncertain spaces, there is always room for new possibilities and new goals and new things that you may want to attach to. I'll stop here and hand over to Ram and to Ujjwal and later pick up a bit more with you. Ram?
Let Ujjwal go first. Yeah, I'll come back after that. By the way, I mean, I saw something on the Kiva, you and Yamini can tackle that later with Smitha. Somebody asked what happens to the people who already registered and probably paid more than this. And obviously, very surely, once you say that you've attended this webinar and so on, we will refund that money back to you. Or if you like to take some other program, we'll adjust it, whatever you like. Yeah. Ujjwal, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ram, and thank you, Cindy. Hi, everyone. So I wanted to start with a question. So if I may request you to respond in the chat box. So when you look at this word thrive, what comes up for you? What is that personal meaning for you? Or what is the dictionary meaning for you for this word thrive? And then we pick it up from there. Harish said it's prosper, at peace, okay. Bloom, succeed, flourish. Enriched, okay. Growth, positive, develop, great. sustain, okay. Wow. To move closer to your identified objectives, arrive. Wow. Thank you for these perspectives. Keep them coming. In the meantime, I'll build on what you have just expressed. So, in order for us to thrive in your own meaning, in your own context, what all do you need? This is my second question, in case you can respond quickly. Okay, whole self being present, vision. Okay, focus, determination, okay. Authentically living, be present, all right. Great. So, yeah, apply, absolutely. Yeah, right conditions. Oh, Ami, wow. Okay. So when I look at some formula kind of a stuff, it reminds me of Timothy Galway, performance is equal to potential minus interference. Yeah. So what I wanted to bring up to you is that external conditions for thriving may or may not be in your circle of control or circle of influence, but what would you really need is to work on thriving internally. So it's always what I have learned from my mentors, Ram and Cindy, who are present here, and absolutely privileged to be with them on this panel today, that it's always, always intrinsic drives the extrinsic. And intrinsic is in your control. It is in your influence. And what all it contains, your beliefs, values, your core purpose, somebody has mentioned vision, your emotions, all that is something that you can work on. And even if external conditions are not favorable, which we wish and pray that it turns favorable for all of us, but even if in some case it is not favorable, your response to those external conditions will always be from a thriving perspective, not from surviving perspective. And that's the whole endeavor of this Thrive 2023. So with that, I would like to invite Ram to build on that.
Yeah, thanks, Ujjaval. Let me try and build on what both of you have said and also try and address the part that I'll probably be covering during this towards the end, the last one. I think it was Aristotle who said 2,500 years ago, maybe more, give me a child for 7 years and I'll give you a man. And many people think that it was the Jesuits who created this motto. They used this motto, absolutely. And they built upon it, and they built upon it tremendously powerfully. I know for that for sure, because I did study for a brief period of time in a Jesuit institution, which was amazing in the way that they helped develop the mind. Now, it's very surprising that today, 2,500 years later, neuroscience is discovering what probably Aristotle meant. One of the very powerful discoveries that have been made, and this has been talked about by people like Bruce Lipton, who's molecular biologist, cellular biologist, pretty much the father of epigenetics. And of course, he's not very popular amongst the medical community because of the many things that he says about spirituality and how medicine is so badly practiced today. And people like Huberman, who's neuroscientist at Stanford. One of the things that's coming out is, and I'll step back a little bit, we have 5 brain waves patterns. The normal brainwave pattern at which we operate is called the beta, which is between 12 and 20 hertz. Hertz is cycles per second. And generally what was known till about 15 years ago was that then there was something called alpha, which was a more relaxed and considered to be the meditative state that everybody spoke about. And you had these conditioning biofeedback thingies, which went clink, 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 if you wear it, and then if you were slightly relaxed, and that was 8 to 12. And there was theta, which was 4 to 8, and then delta, 0 to 4. Delta is pretty much your deep sleep at that point in time where the brain pretty much goes to sleep. Theta is the wave pattern, which is 4 to 8. And it's now known that up to the age of 7, pretty much, most children are in the theta state. And what does the theta state imply? The theta state implies that you are in a influenceable state of mind, a hypnotic state of mind. So whatever people tell you, your caregivers, you tend to internalize it, you tend to anchor it. And unfortunately, what happens is, most of these instructions that come to us, advice that comes to us when we are in that age, because of the kind of things that we do as a child, because of the curiosity and whatever, adventure spirit and so on and so forth, most children, is about, don't do this, you shouldn't do that, whatever. It's the reasoning behind it, the logic behind it is not really fully understood, but the don't part of it, you shouldn't part of it, you ought not part of it, is what goes into the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind. So when Ujjaval talked about this external, internal barriers, and Cindy talked about the self and so on, what really happens today, we know that for sure, okay, there are enough experiments that have been done and empirical studies that have been done. I'm not a neuroscientist or anyone, I'm just an enthusiast in these kind of quantum science and neuroscience and all these kind of stuff. And what's been shown is that these which go into us, they pretty much become the operating system. Okay, so when we think that I'm thinking, my cognitive brain, which is the frontal cortex or the prefrontal cortex, is governing what I do, it doesn't really, because it is being operated by these memory systems and what's called the limbic brain, the thalamus and the hypothalamus and the amygdala, hippocampus, and so on. These are the ones which are the drivers of the prefrontal cortex. And so there is one part of the brain, which is the operating system. There's another part of the brain, Bruce Lipton says so beautifully, that is like the keyboard, you're working on it. Now, unless a keyboard is in sync with the operating system is going to override it. And that's what happens, or most often. And he says 90% of the time, some people say it's maybe 80% of the time, but a very large percentage of the time. Does that we have anchored in us as unconscious memories when we grew up, and coaching, we call it limiting beliefs, and the values which are imbibed from pretty much our caregivers, which might be about our faith, culture, the way we grew up, and so on and so forth, which influences us to do what we think. And if you just watch yourself, and Otto Scharmer calls that the closed mind, the closed heart and closed will, and that is how we become closed. The closed is, don't do this. I'm not responsible. I can't do this. I don't even think it exists, because that is to that extreme that we go. Now, why is it relevant? Why is all this relevant in such beautiful words, which will ask you to come up with thrive in 2023? Because for thriving, for flourishing, for blooming, for growing, for enhancing, and so many things, you need to make resolutions. You need to make affirmations. You need to have intentions. And it's not really just about your life. If you're in the corporate world, unfortunately, your OKRs and KPIs and KRAs and whatever other alphabetical soups that you have in your company, they all require that you arrive at certain decisions, certain intentions, certain affirmations, certain resolutions, and so on. And we have this great theory of locus of control. What is our locus of control? But what we tend to forget is the most obstructive and the highest impediment in the locus of control lies within you. It's not outside. You can always find ways and means of overcoming obstacles outside. It's far more difficult for us to overcome the obstacles which are lying inside. And just before we came on this, Cindy and I and Kiva were talking about certain things. But these are your blind spot. You don't even realize, like, for example, for a long time, Cindy's instructions to me that was passed on from Sweta that I should smile. Okay. And for fully 60 years of my life, in a setting like this, group of people, or telling people or discussing with people, I could never smile because that was the way I grew up in the corporate rat race. And there was a point in time when I was working with a group of people, 21 people, I still remember. One of them was a man, the rest of them were women. After 1 hour, they said, "We cannot tolerate you. Get out of here." I said, "What the heck? What's wrong with you?" They said, "Something is wrong with you because you don't smile. If you learn to smile and you tell us, okay, that makes a difference." So willy-nilly, I guess I learned to smile. And there were other habits that I picked up. Like, for example, I would close my eyes even when I was standing, walking, teaching, whatever it is. And people used to say, hey, here comes a guy who closes his eyes when he is doing something, whatever it is. These are things I don't even know. I didn't even know that I did. Fortunately, the closing my eyes didn't really affect too much, except I could have fallen down somewhere. But not smiling did affect in many ways people who came in touch with me. It could probably resulted in my not being able to achieve many things where a good smile would have made my life easier. So all I'm really pointing out is, I think a very large part, it's not even 50-50, it's probably far more than that, lies within us in terms of the control. And that we need to somehow, this is what we are going to talk about in that part of the session, and some of it will be, I'm sure, Ujjaval is going to talk about values and beliefs, and Cindy is going to talk about self, and Priya is going to talk about emotional intelligence. All of it really come together in terms of how in our mind we need to realign, reframe in some ways, that we understand what our blind spots are, so that we are able to make the best use of the kind of resolutions and intentions and affirmations that we set for ourselves, and so they become successful. And just to end, and we'll pick it up after Cindy, and which we'll talk about some more, is, studies pretty much show that the maximum effectiveness of resolutions, and they have studied it extensively for New Year resolution, they have also studied it extensively for decision-making and stuff, is about 50%. Pretty often they are as low as about 20%. Okay, assume that you are at the higher end of that 50%. It's pretty pathetic. It's just as good as tossing a coin. It's a probability of throwing a dice, maybe. So what hopefully you would learn and be able to practice at the end of whatever we are trying to put together as a totality of psychology, neurosciences, spirituality, and maybe even better quantum science, if you're interested in it, is really about how do you enhance the 50 to maybe 80? Just imagine. how much more power that you have. If you're able to convert your decisions 80% of the time, or even 85% of the time, into successful outcomes and actions, wouldn't it be brilliant? And that's what we are hoping to achieve. Back to you, Cindy and Ujjaval.
Ram, on a lighter note, be sure to attend Ujjaval's session on beliefs. Around the smile and the closing your eyes. So one of the, if you want to call it spiritual aspects I'm going to talk about is around attachment and detachment. And I've got some resources and some tools, and we'll do some work around that. For now, I want to pick up something Deepak Chopra said, a small piece of what he said around attachment and detachment. And he speaks about, or part of that beautiful saying was around, and in our willingness to step into the unknown, the field of all possibilities, we surrender ourselves to the creative mind that orchestrates the dance of the universe. So in all this uncertainty, sometimes we think that we are attaching ourselves to so much that limits us, puts us in a box. I can't do. Oh, what's the point? And words like that. And yet, it is in the detachment that creativity stands out and helps us, in the word that we're using today, thrive. How to do that, we'll talk about in my webinar. Ujjaval?
Yeah, thanks, Cindy and Ram. So about beliefs and values, what we are going to touch upon is something, a precursor to that I want to share with all of you today, is that there is one amazing Chinese-Canadian coach, come communication scientist. Her name is Dr. Hazen Moon. Okay, she has just authored a book called Coaching A to Z, and she has assessed almost 10,000 coaching conversations. And yeah, I'll just type that in the chat box in a moment, Anubha. So she has assessed 10,000 coaching conversations, and she came up with an amazing model known as DOQ, okay, which is Dialogic Orientation Quadrant, okay, in which she says that our past and future both has two compartments. So our past has two compartments. One is a resourceful past and a regretful past. So from a resourceful past, we derive our strengths, and we, whenever we remember that past, we draw our energy from. And a regretful past, whenever we remember that, think about that, our energy drains, and we, feel disempowered, if I may say so. And like that, for our future, we have two compartments. One is a preferred future, where all of us we want to be, say, for example, thrive. After thriving, we want to reach to the preferred state of our future. However, one compartment of the future also contains what she calls a dreadful future. So whenever we think about that future, we feel that I want to be in a preferred state, my preferred future. However, and then ... then we feel we are constrained. Say, for example, I want to take a risk in my life. However, I'm concerned, I'm worried, I'm anxious about that part of the future. So whenever we think about preferred future, we feel energized. And whenever we think about the dreadful future, we feel disempowered, we become anxious, we feel fearful. So whenever we talk about our beliefs, which are enabling beliefs and limiting beliefs, so our limiting beliefs could comprise of what is rooted in our future, which is not very, very great, which is we are anxious about, which is our future, which is dreadful future, or the past, which is regretful past. So what Ram has beautifully mentioned, that how one can reframe the beliefs, how one can leverage the values, understand what our value says, because our values are guardrails of our lives, and it tells us what is right, what is not right. Anything that you're thinking with your shoulds, I should do that, they should do that, I should not do that, they should not do that, I should have done that, they should have done that. So whenever we are operating from the shoulds, there are all possibilities that we might be looking through the lens of values. So how do you understand this interplay of beliefs and values, and perhaps look at reframing the limiting beliefs and leverage your strengths from the resourceful past, and also catapult yourself towards the preferred future where you wish to be and which gives you a feeling that is thrive. So we are going to do some exercises. I'm also going to recommend some, personal value assessment kind of a stuff, which will help you to assess your own values, and also how to work around beliefs, strengthen the strengths, and work towards limiting beliefs. So that's what is the agenda when you come to my session. And of course, our colleague Priya is not there, but she is amazing in terms of emotional intelligence, because emotions also drive our values, our beliefs, and there is a great interplay of all of these things. So look forward to work with you on that.
Thanks, Ujjaval. Let me take it from there. What I would like to talk about, and what I would like those of you in the audience, is to try and think about situations similar to what I'm talking about. It may not be exactly the same. And pretty much, as New Year resolutions, the cliches of resolutions are usually, I would like to stop smoking, I would like to stop drinking, and so on and so forth. Okay, let me not get there. Because they have certain standard patterns, and it's not too difficult to get out of them if you know how. But there are, at least that you are very clear in terms of what you want to do and how you're going to go about it, or what has not worked for you. I'll talk about a couple of cases. One is a young person, a woman who I was working with. Amazingly well qualified, tremendous potential. But there was some difficulty in terms of converting that potential into performance. So went through ups and downs. And one of the things, as we discussed, and I wouldn't really call it as coaching in a formal session, because much of it was done very informally, because of the fact that these people I'm going to talk about, people who I knew well. It arose from childhood as well as adolescent memories, which were about constantly being put down. One of several children, a girl versus maybe a couple of boys, and in India, the boys are always prized possessions. I don't know why the hell they are, but they are. So, yeah, you can't do this. This is not what you're supposed to do, or because of certain reasons that over a period of time that, yeah, we would like you to be there to take care of us, and so on and so forth. There were multiple pressures. And whenever the girl was trying to break out of that, and that would result in some amount of guilt. And to make matters worse, she grew up in a Christian tradition where guilt is highly prized, because we are all sinners. We are all born sinners, and therefore we are guilty until we are proved innocent in that kind of a sense. So it has a happy ending or a happy movement forward in terms of understanding where this comes from. And I'll come to the commonality part of it in a few minutes' time. The second was another person, married with children, and desiring to have, in a very modern sense, which is very desirable, that there should be a tremendous amount of work-life balance. She was a professional herself. The husband was more in a corporate. She was more a freelance professional than the husband was more a corporate constrained professional, would call it. And much as he loved the family and so on, and was not always available out there, and there was a constant friction. So there's a period of time I was working with both of them. And what transpired was here, it's the opposite of what I said in the first case, and which was more like what Ujjaval talked about as a disastrous scenario. But this was a very nurturing scenario, that she grew up in a family where the father had, let's say, had the freedom to do what he wanted. He was on his own, he was an entrepreneur, but the way that he ran his life was very different. They believed in work-life balance. So she saw the parents working in a much different way. And the aspiration was always that this is what I want in my life. And that wasn't quite happening. And again, that too had a happy ending when certain things were realized. So these were some of the areas where these all happened several years ago. And I really did not know the names for these things, but started with certain very basic spiritual practices, in a sense, based on chakra work that I was doing, energy center work that I was doing, and emotion management, as it were. So I would ask them to go into themselves and feel in their body what happened, what we today call, I understand now that it's called somatic. I wasn't quite aware of all that. What I would do is to teach them some simple, because by that time, I had a reasonable amount of background in terms of meditation, breathing, and so on and so forth as a teacher. So I would just simply ask them to become aware of the breath and go relaxed, and then think about this, what is causing them tension that I'm not able to achieve in the case of one that I want to achieve, and this is what is coming up for me. So just think back on the times that when I was invalidated, when I was not feeling loved, or whatever it was. In the case of the other one, her past in terms of experiential memories were very good, and therefore there was no real sense in going back in there. And so in her case, it was about what she was experiencing at this point in time, that husband said that he would be back in time at a certain point in time, didn't, and the kids had to go to sleep and all that kind of a stuff. So what did you feel about it? Surprisingly, irrespective of whether the past memories were not positive or the past memories were little too positive, which then tended to interpret the current life as not so positive, the ability to go inside and start looking at it, all that you have to, there are multiple ways, and it's a little bit of a complex way of understanding what really happens. But even if you don't do anything, if you ask them just to go into that state and feel what happens in their body, what really happens is that these memories that they have, whether it's the deep past, in the case of the first one, or in the present, recent past, in the case of the other, they get exposed. And I call this whole experience as relieving by reliving. It's a kind of a healing process. And you start feeling it, and as you internalize it, as you stay in it, and as you watch your body, as you watch your breath, And you know there is somebody who cares for you along with you, because I had a lot of, we had a very good trust between us. And then I would ask them to say what's happening within them. And some of the things were amazing in terms of how they felt there was this huge knot or a tension or something like a rock, something else, fire or whatever that was inside, and how the colors changed, how the structure changed, how everything changed. And finally, and I'm not imagining this, and I'm telling you the exact truth. And again, I sometimes, as a assessor at PCC and MCC level, I get conversations where people do this and really happens in conversation, can be done in a coaching conversation, conversationally, how people move from a deep despondent state into something tremendously optimistic. They start thriving. Within 20 minutes, within 30 minutes. I don't know how many of you were there. Cindy would remember this. We had a session at Fiona Adamson, and she had a colleague of, Cindy had a colleague of herself from South Africa who was there, and Fiona started talking to her. Fiona specializes in this. She doesn't call it somatics or ontology or something. She calls it transpersonal coaching, if I remember right. It was taken from Sir John Whitmore's work on transpersonal, amazing work. If you read even his Coaching for Performance in the later versions, there is a separate part of it, part 3 of Coaching for Performance by John Whitmore, where it is, and there are other people who have taken that forward. So Fiona called for someone to sort of be coached, and this woman stepped up, and Cindy and I know her well. And as she, I say, hey, what would you like to talk about? What is it that could be of help to you today? And she was saying something, and Fiona noticed that her hands were like this, or something similar, I don't remember. So Fiona said, Sridhar, you know, and Fiona is about my age, 70s or something, and this lady younger, he said, Sridhar, do you notice what your hands are doing? And this person didn't. She had to wash them. So she looked at it. They are tight, they are tense. So are you comfortable with that? She said, no. So what would you like to be comfortable with? And you could see actually the hands opening up. And she became like this. And then they started having a conversation. Fiona took it in various ways. I don't know what. In 10 minutes, and they didn't even discuss a problem that person came with. And she said, I don't have an issue to talk about. I came here with an issue. I don't have an issue to talk about. That's a power. What I really would like to tell you is that that simple process, what it does is remove the knots, remove the blocks from within, which is what holding us back from intentions into action. You are the locus of control, and you are also the obstacle of control. And therefore, how do you overcome that? Whatever those limiting beliefs are. It may seem fanciful to you, but this is true. And I have taught this to literally thousands of people, and it has worked. And some of it I might be able to do in whatever the 2 hours we do. And we are hoping that next year we would do something much longer, into much greater detail, in terms of taking people through those steps, which literally can change their lives. So at this point in time, let's hope at least it will change your 2023.
That's lovely, Ram. And you know, you mentioned, well, what you spoke about was the compassion and empathy and kindness, just alluding to all that we can do to take care of self. And even when we're coaching, taking care of the coaching process of the relationship, client, ourselves. The one thing I'm also going to touch upon is developing agility, or an understanding to look at the situation with some clarity versus thinking it's beyond our control. You know, as a small example, I recall when COVID started and it was spreading all around the world, and we were looking at numbers regularly. And then, of course, the war in Ukraine. And I developed some kind of habit to make sure that every day at a particular time I switched on the TV and would catch up. I had to catch up with CNN, exactly what was going on. And thereafter, I just felt sad, really sad for quite a few hours, you know, as to what is going on in the world. Now, I'm sure many people felt that way. But the other thing I also felt was a bit helpless. As if one day I had to have the serious chat with myself. Like nobody was holding my hand to the remote and asking me to switch on the TV. Nobody was doing that. It was me. So I had to kind of have the self-talk and develop for myself what I was doing and understanding that I was responsible there and I could change some things. It didn't mean it completely took away from me watching the news or doing some catch up, but I did it in different ways and I stopped making it an habit, making it more my choice to know. One of the concepts we're going to look at is how to develop agility and develop for yourself the clarity of stepping back and looking at the situation with allowing yourself or agreeing that you're going to sit down or pay attention to it and develop your clarity and understanding. So, you know, when you have those moments of saying, there's nothing I can do about this. No, that's not true. Sit down, question yourself, and find some new possibilities. The one thing we'll also talk about is calmness. When you calm, you know that you're, I don't want to do any kind of neuroscience explanations, but you know that clarity emerges and more possibility shows up because the stress is reduced. We'll talk a bit more about that. I'm mindful of time now. I'm going to hand over to Ujjaval, but before I do that, an invitation for you to ask your questions so that we could spend some time looking at your questions. And of course, you know, anything more that you want to talk about, bring it to Thrive, bring it to our sessions. Because even if we don't have all the answers or there's not enough time to dig into it, we can write blogs, provide some resources thereafter. Ujjaval?
Thank you, Cindy. I think after profound wisdom by Ram and Cindy, I have really nothing to add, but just to invite everybody to be hopeful, to be optimistic, and believe in our own ability to be able to thrive more than what we have been doing. We have crossed some of the most difficult times for the mankind in last 2 years, and now it's only a way forward, which is better. So some of the readings Ram has mentioned about Dr. Bruce Lipton. So reading The Biology of Beliefs, that there are many things that we are going to draw their learnings from, and also Thrive. Ariana Huffington has her own entire business named after Thrive. So it also includes self-care. How do you take care of your sleep? How do you take care of your own self? And our mind is like a garden. Let us not allow anybody to walk with the dirty shoes, including ourselves. Yeah. So regulating emotions, practicing detachment. Cindy mentioned very big point about detachment. So one of the primary conditions for reframing is to look at it from a witness awareness or spectator awareness or meta awareness. That I have learned all of these things from Ram, and hopefully, if time permitting, he will cover that in that session or future sessions. But that's the key to thriving, because it's not the events that really matter, but the meaning that we provide to the events, the feelings that get generated and we associate with our feelings makes it good or bad. So how do we try and practice detachment, if not at all times, but many a times? So that is something which I would like to sum up with. And of course, invite any questions that you may have for any of us.
I also want to say, Ujjaval, I think it's important we mention this, that the format for Thrive is not this one.
Yeah.
We will use normal Zoom, we will see all of you and interact.
Yes.
Engagement and interaction will be greater on Thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in case, Cindy, if I can clarify that as well, we got some of the queries that what if I'm not able to attend all 4, and if I miss out on any one of these, will recording be available? So absolutely, that will be made available for those of you who have registered. Yeah. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm getting a question that it will be interesting to see how our values affect our beliefs. In which session shall get that covered, please? So I'll be happy to cover that in my session, but also our sessions are also not compartmentalized. So if you attend all 4, you will see that everything is like a necklace. Each pearl is, woven like that. So if you attend all 4, there will be many overlaps, there will be many interdependent and interwoven aspects. But yeah, primarily, I'm going to cover that in my program, my session. And in case you have any questions, once you're registered, please send it to us in advance. We shall be happy to address there as well, and here as well, in case you want to ask anything now.
Ram?
Yeah. Look, I just, the few minutes that we have, Jennifer said about something about the question of, I don't know what's going to happen. Actually, this is an existential question which creates a fear of death in us. It's not because of anything else except the fact, like Cindy earlier talked about uncertainty. And you just don't know what the heck is going to happen to you after that. Okay, you may have different beliefs. If you're a good person, you would go into those beautiful places where there are people, angels singing with harps in their hands and stuff like that, or you would be there with the sharp-tailed demons driving you around fires or whatever may be. All that could happen. But the fact is, none of it may be true, because the hell and heaven are things that you go through in this life and not in some afterlife. And Socrates so beautifully said before he had to force to consume hemlock, and they said, aren't you afraid to die? He said, no. He said, what do you mean you're not afraid? He said, look, some people tell me that there's nothing after this, we don't know what's going to happen. So that's fine. I'm quite comfortable with being uncertain. So I'm going to go into that state. Or they say, yeah, this or that is going to happen. Fine. Nothing can be worse than, it's unfortunate, but he said, than the life that I have led with my wife. So he had a pretty bad marriage. So he said, anything after this is going to be heaven for me. So I'm perfectly fine. So that was his attitude. But in the work that I have done over a long period of time, and with a few people, maybe a dozen, who actually had near-death experiences, and many of this, what has been described in some of the psychological journals, and I think it's very true. Most of them told me that they felt that they were going through a tunnel of darkness, and then suddenly there was a light, and something, maybe a voice or something, told them this is not time for you to go, and therefore you come back. And one fantastic thing that happened to them after that, and these were some of them very young people. There was a girl who was hardly about 16 or 17 when I met her. There was some that little older. They said, we have no fear of death, absolutely no fear of death. And we are able to take risks. And of course, there is a certain biological blessing. And for some reason, I don't know why, I never had a fear of death for a very long time. And I still don't have. But the point is, then I wanted to study it more. And I found that it's the loss of ego, as it were. It's a thing of, what am I going to do? What's going to happen to me? This me. So if you now prepare yourself that this me is just a mirage, the mind body, and there is a part of energy, and then that energy is the same with everybody, and I'm part of this larger energy space, then if those of, I mean, what I would like you to do is to send us some, those of you who are attending the session, have decided to attend the session, let us know what is it that you would like to cover. I can take you through what I call an elemental meditation, which is something that I found very effective in removing fears, and especially the fear of death. And ironically, this question, what's going to happen to me, is based on two things. One is, first, it's true that we can control everything. But it's also true that we control nothing. I don't control the next breath I'm going to take. I have no power to be able to confidently predict that my exhalation would be followed by an inhalation. Both are true. But there are certain things that if you understand that I can control, which is my own thoughts, my behavior, my emotions, and so on and so forth, which is what we are going to address in here. Forget about the outside. It's okay. What matters is, and I think Jennifer or someone talked about that, stillness. If you are able to get into the space of stillness, which is a state of, ironically, energy, which is waves, it's not about still, but it's a tremendous state of calmness and stillness. And if you're able to get there, automatically you'll be able to move forward without being afraid, without sort of letting these obstacles sort of control you. And again, there is a small anecdote I just want to add to what Cindy said about calmness, she said. In fact, one of the neuroscientists that I was listening to in a podcast said, you know what, one of the reasons why many intentions do not really work is because at the time you make the intentions, you visualize what is going to happen. And that actually creates, Cindy said she doesn't want to go into the neurosciences, but I can't resist going into it. It creates dopamine. And dopamine is your reward hormone or neurochemical or whatever you might want to call it. And the fulfillment as a result of the dopamine is so great, then any action following fulfilling that intention sort of, you know, it's not very important. So if you really need to find something that you need to act upon, so you need to be aware of that as well. And therefore, any visualization that you do would need to follow from intentions through actions, especially things which could be possibly be obstacles for you. Unless you have reached my age, where I find today, I'm quite happy at the intense stage, where the happiness that the dopamine brings is perfectly all right. There's an acceptance with gratitude. So there's a feeling that whatever happens is fine. If you're able to reach that stage, that is fantastic. But I'm not advising any of you to sort of fast forward and reach that stage. You have to reach it at your own pace whenever you'd like to. There are many things for you to do in between, and to starting with thriving in 2023. Okay, I'll let Cindy and which will finish this.
And Ram is going to take you through a process of creating your goals, creating your future. A similar process. Somebody asked a question on the book on beliefs. It's Biology of Beliefs. Who's the author, Ram?
Bruce Lipton, BRUCLIPTON. Just put Biology of Beliefs, you will get it.
Yeah, And just to add over there that when you order 10th anniversary edition because it is fully updated, almost rewritten. Otherwise, the older versions may or may not be relevant as of today. And his even another book, The Honeymoon Effect, is also really amazing on the same topic.
Yeah, they can go to the website, brucelipton.com. It's amazing. There's a massive section on resources. The kind of material that's available there is outstanding. And believe you me, I mean, there are a lot of skeptics out there who don't, they say many things about it, but I have found many of the things I have tried and they work. That's all I can say.
And somebody asked how long the sessions are. It's 2 hours long.
Yeah, I think.
And of course, we'll have resources and tools that, if it's not covered in the session, we'll lead you to it anyway, and you'll have the session notes. So let me check with Kiva. Kiva, is there anything we left out or you want to cover?
I think with regards to the session, I think 3 of you have really given us an insight into what's coming our way. Personally, really excited and feeling really pumped up, to prepare myself, get ready for 2023, make it a positive year for myself and thrive in 2023. So I want to thank you all for coming in, for taking the time out. It was wonderful listening to you and really looking forward to our series. For all our participants who've joined in, thank you so much. It was lovely to interact with you all. I hope you use this opportunity to share about Thrive in 2023 in your networks. There are so many of us, be it people from the coaching community, outside of the coaching community, wherever there are people who are getting ready for 2023, and I think that's almost all of us. Do share this with them and encourage them to sign up so they can really learn and make the most of all the wisdom that we got a sneak peek of today in the session. Do keep in mind that our discount is on till 11:59 p.m. IST today, and it's also open to all your friends and your family, anyone who you think will benefit from this. And the whole idea is to really spread the word so maximum people can benefit from this and feel ready for 2023. So in that spirit, hope to have many of you join in and hope to have your friends and family join in as well. Thank you so much for coming in, and thank you again, Ram, Cindy, and Ujjaval. Wonderful to hear you.
Thank you, Kiva. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.